I never thought a simple shift at the LGBTQ helpline would turn my world upside down. But there I was, Lillian Thompson, professional mountain climber extraordinaire, sitting in a cramped office in downtown Scottsdale, headset on, ready to lend an ear to troubled souls. The fan whirred lazily overhead, barely stirring the stifling Arizona heat. LGBTQ helpline, this is Lillian. How can I assist you today? I answered, my voice steady and practiced. The line crackled and a familiar voice sent shivers down my spine. Lil, is that really you? My heart stopped. Sarah, my first love, the one who got away. 15 years melted away in an instant. Sarah? I whispered, gripping the edge of my desk. What's wrong? Her sobs came through the line, raw and desperate. I'm in trouble, Lil. I don't know what to do. As Sarah poured out her story, a messy divorce, financial ruin, threats from her ex, I was catapulted back to that fateful summer at Eagle Mountain Retreat, the stolen glances across the campfire, the tentative first kiss behind the mess hall, the heartbreak when Sarah chose the safe path of a conventional life over the uncertainty of our love. I never should have left you, Sarah choked out. God, I've made such a mess of everything. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to comfort her, to promise I'd make everything all right. But I wasn't that love-struck teenager anymore. I was Lillian Thompson, conqueror of Everest, K2, and countless other peaks. I'd built a life for myself, one climb at a time. Sarah, I said gently, I can't fix this for you, but I can give you some resources. A crash echoed through the line, followed by a man's angry shout. Sarah's terrified gasp was the last thing I heard before the call went dead. Sarah? Sarah! I yelled into the void, my heart racing. But there was nothing but silence. I yanked off my headset, my mind reeling. What the hell just happened? Should I call the police? But I didn't even know where Sarah was living now. As I paced the small office, I caught sight of myself in the grimy mirror. My blonde hair was escaping its ponytail, and my blue eyes were wide with shock. When did I get so old? When did life become this complicated tangle of past and present? I grabbed my phone, scrolling through my contacts. There had to be someone who could help, someone who could track Sarah down. But as I stared at the names, I realized how isolated I'd become. My life had narrowed to the next climb, the next challenge. When was the last time I'd even been on a date? The helpline phone rang again, jolting me back to reality. I had a job to do, other people who needed help. I couldn't drop everything for a ghost from my past. Could I? As I settled back into my chair, Sarah's desperate voice echoed in my head. I needed to clear my mind, to get some perspective, and there was only one place I could do that. I pulled up my climbing gear website, fingers flying over the keys. There was an expedition leaving for the Superstition Mountains next week. Challenging, remote, perfect. As I hit book now, I felt a familiar thrill of anticipation. Whatever was going on with Sarah, whatever midlife crisis I was barreling towards, I knew one thing for certain: I needed to get back on a mountain. Everything else could wait. Little did I know, that impulsive booking was about to change my life in ways I could never have imagined. The Superstition Mountains loomed before me, a jagged silhouette against the cerulean Arizona sky. I inhaled deeply, savoring the crisp mountain air that was a far cry from Scottsdale's stifling heat. This was where I belonged, where I could think clearly. As I adjusted my backpack straps, a voice called out, "Lillian Thompson?" I turned to see a woman striding towards me, all confidence and lean muscle. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical braid, and her green eyes sparkled with an intensity that caught me off guard. "That's me," I replied, extending my hand. She grasped it firmly. "Allison Reed, your guide for this expedition." Her grip lingered a moment longer than necessary, sending an unexpected jolt through me. I cleared my throat. "Guide? I don't need a standard procedure for this route," Allison cut in smoothly, "even for someone with your impressive resume." I bristled at her tone but bit back a retort. She was just doing her job after all. As we began our ascent, Allison's expertise became evident. She navigated the treacherous terrain with grace, pointing out hidden dangers and offering tips with a casual authority that both impressed and irritated me. "So, what brings a renowned climber like yourself to our humble superstitions?" Allison asked as we paused for water. I hesitated, Sarah's desperate voice echoing in my mind. Just needed to clear my head, I said finally. Allison's eyes met mine, a flicker of understanding passing between us. The mountains have a way of putting things in perspective, she murmured. We pushed on, the physical exertion a welcome distraction from my tumultuous thoughts. As the sun began to dip towards the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Allison called a halt. We'll set up camp here, she announced, gesturing to a relatively flat area sheltered by a rocky overhang. As we worked to pitch our tents, dark clouds began rolling in with alarming speed. The first fat drops of rain splattered against the rocks just as we secured the last stake. Shit, Allison muttered, glancing up at the roiling sky. This wasn't in the forecast. A crack of thunder shook the air, and suddenly the heavens opened up. We dove into the nearest tent, rain lashing against the thin fabric. I found myself pressed against Allison in the cramped space, acutely aware of her warmth and the scent of pine that clung to her skin. Our eyes met in the dim light, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Well, Allison said, a wry smile tugging at her lips. Looks like we're in for a cozy night. I laughed, the tension broken. Not exactly the wilderness experience I was expecting. As the storm raged outside, Allison and I talked, really talked, about our shared love of climbing, our favorite summits, the close calls we'd had. I found myself opening up about Sarah's call, surprised at how easy it was to confide in this virtual stranger. Sometimes the past has a way of ambushing us, Allison said softly. But you can't let it derail your present. I nodded, struck by the wisdom in her words. As the night wore on and the storm showed no signs of abating, our conversation drifted to lighter topics. I discovered Allison had a wicked sense of humor and a passion for indie rock that rivaled my own. No way, I exclaimed when she mentioned her favorite band. I thought I was the only person over 30 who'd heard of them. Allison's laugh was warm and genuine. There's a music festival in Scottsdale next month. They're headlining. We should go. The casual invitation hung in the air between us, laden with possibility. I found myself nodding before I could overthink it. Yeah, that sounds great. As we finally drifted off to sleep, lulled by the steady drum of rain, I realized the weight I'd been carrying since Sarah's call had lifted slightly. I still didn't have any answers, but somehow, that seemed less important now. The next morning dawned clear and bright, the storm having washed the world clean. As Allison and I emerged from the tent, blinking in the sunlight, I felt a spark of something I hadn't experienced in years, anticipation, not just for the climb ahead, but for what might come after. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of an adventure that would challenge everything I thought I knew about myself, about love, and about the heights we're willing to climb for both. The weeks following our Superstition Mountains expedition flew by in a blur of client climbs and routine. But as the night of the music festival approached, I found myself checking the clock with increasing frequency, an unfamiliar flutter in my stomach. I stood in front of my closet feeling ridiculous. When was the last time I'd fretted over what to wear? But this wasn't just any night out. This was. Well, I wasn't quite sure what it was. I settled on a faded band tee and well-worn jeans, topped with my favorite leather jacket. Casual, but not too casual. As I caught sight of myself in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. My blue eyes were bright with anticipation, a hint of a smile playing on my lips. I looked alive. The festival grounds were a riot of color and sound. I scanned the crowd, searching for Allison's familiar face. A tap on my shoulder made me spin around. Hey, mountain woman, Allison grinned, her green eyes dancing. She looked incredible in a flowy top and ripped jeans, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. Hey yourself, trail guide, I shot back, ignoring the way my pulse quickened. We made our way through the crowd, our shoulders brushing as we navigated the press of bodies. The energy was electric, the air thick with excitement, and the heady scent of summer. As the first chords rang out, Allison grabbed my hand. Come on, she shouted over the music, pulling me towards the stage. We found a spot in the thick of it, surrounded by a sea of swaying bodies. As the band launched into one of my favorite songs, I felt the music wash over me, sweeping away all the doubts and worries I'd been carrying. I glanced at Allison, catching her watching me with a soft smile. What? I asked, suddenly self-conscious. She leaned in close, her lips brushing my ear. You look happy, she said simply. The closeness, the music, the night air, it all conspired to make me feel dizzy. reckless. I turned to face her fully, our bodies mere inches apart. For a moment, the world around us faded away, and all I could see were those green eyes. All I could feel was the electricity crackling between us. Allison's gaze dropped to my lips, and I felt myself leaning in, drawn by an irresistible force. But just then, a surge in the crowd pushed us apart. The moment shattered. We spent the rest of the night dancing, singing along to every song, our hands finding excuses to touch, a brush of fingers here, a steadying grip on a waist there. Each contact sent sparks skittering across my skin. As the final encore faded and the crowd began to disperse, neither of us seemed eager to end the night. We wandered the emptying festival grounds, talking and laughing, the conversation flowing as easily as it had that night in the tent. "I can't believe you've never tried rock climbing in Joshua Tree," Allison said, shaking her head in mock dismay. "We'll have to fix that." The casual mention of future plans sent a thrill through me. "Is that an invitation, Reed?" She bumped my shoulder playfully. "Maybe. You think you can keep up with me?" I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, it's on." We reached my car, but I made no move to leave. Allison leaned against the door, her eyes never leaving mine. The air between us felt charged, heavy with unspoken possibilities. "I had a great time tonight," I said softly, taking a step closer. "Me too," Allison murmured. Her hand reached out, tucking a stray strand of hair behind my ear. Her fingers lingered, tracing a line down my jaw. I caught her hand in mine, my heart pounding. We stood there for a long moment, on the edge of something new and terrifying and exhilarating. Allison broke the silence first. "Lillian," she began, her voice husky. The shrill ring of my phone made us both jump. I fumbled for it, ready to silence whoever was calling, but then I saw the number. The LGBTQ helpline. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice tight. "I have to take this." Allison nodded, understanding in her eyes. As I answered the call, stepping away for privacy, I saw her watching me with a mix of concern and something else. Disappointment? Longing? The call was brief but intense. A young woman in crisis, needing immediate intervention. By the time I hung up, I felt drained, the magic of the evening dissipating like mist in the morning sun. I turned back to Allison, apology written all over my face. "I have to go," I said, hating the words even as they left my mouth. "There's a situation I need to handle." Allison nodded, her expression unreadable. "Of course. Go do what you need to do." I hesitated, not wanting to leave things unfinished between us. "Allison, She silenced me with a gentle finger on my lips. "It's okay," she said softly. "We'll talk soon. Promise me?" I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just let something precious slip through my fingers. But as the city lights blurred around me, I forced myself to focus on the task at hand. There was someone out there who needed me, and I couldn't let them down. Still, as I parked outside the crisis center, Allison's touch lingered on my skin, a promise of something more, something that would have to wait. For now. The weeks following the music festival were a whirlwind of stolen moments and mounting tension. Allison and I found excuses to meet. Coffee after her guided tours, chance encounters at the climbing gym, even a shared volunteer shift at a local LGBTQ youth center. Each time, the air between us crackled with unspoken possibilities. But there was always something holding me back. The ghost of Sarah's desperate call, the weight of professional boundaries, the fear of losing myself in someone else again. Allison, to her credit, never pushed. She seemed content to let things unfold naturally, her quiet confidence both reassuring and maddening. I found myself studying her when she wasn't looking, the graceful line of her neck, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed, the strength in her hands as she demonstrated a new climbing technique. It was during one such demonstration that things finally came to a head. We were at the base of a challenging route in the McDowell Mountains, the Arizona sun beating down mercilessly. "The key is to trust your feet," Allison explained, reaching up to point out a tiny outcropping. "This hold looks insignificant, but it's all you need to make the next move." I nodded, trying to focus on her words, and not the way her shirt had ridden up, revealing a strip of tanned skin. "Got it. Trust my feet. Piece of cake." Allison quirked an eyebrow. "All right, hotshot. Show me what you've got." I began my ascent, hyper-aware of Allison's gaze on me. The first few moves were easy enough, but as I reached the crux of the route, I hesitated. The hold Allison had pointed out seemed impossibly small. "Trust your feet, Lil," Allison called from below. "You've got this." Taking a deep breath, I shifted my weight and reached for the next hold. For a heart-stopping moment, I felt my grip slipping. Then, miraculously, my foot found purchase on that tiny outcropping. "Yes!" I heard Allison cheer. "Keep going." Emboldened, I pushed on, my movements becoming more fluid, more confident. As I neared the top, I felt a rush of exhilaration. This was why I climbed, for moments like these, when the world narrowed to nothing but rock and sky and the rhythm of my own breath. I was so caught up in the climb that I almost missed it, a loose piece of rock, barely visible. My hand closed around it before I realized my mistake. "Lillian, watch out!" Allison's warning came a split second too late. The rock crumbled beneath my fingers, and suddenly I was falling. Time seemed to slow as I plummeted through the air, my mind racing through every safety protocol I'd ever learned. Then, impact. But instead of the hard ground, I found myself caught in strong arms. Allison. She must have positioned herself perfectly to catch me, taking the brunt of the fall. We tumbled to the ground together, a tangle of limbs and ropes. When the dust settled, I found myself lying on top of Allison, our faces inches apart. "Are you okay?" We both asked simultaneously, then laughed at the absurdity of it all. I started to push myself up, but Allison's arms tightened around me. "Wait," she murmured, "just wait a second." I froze, suddenly acutely aware of every point of contact between us. Allison's breath was warm on my cheek, her heart pounding against mine. Her eyes, those mesmerizing green eyes, were dark with an emotion I was afraid to name. "Lillian," she whispered, one hand coming up to cup my cheek. "I can't do this anymore. This dance we've been doing. I need to know if you feel it too." My breath caught in my throat. This was the moment I'd been simultaneously longing for and dreading. The moment when I'd have to decide if I was brave enough to take this leap. "Allison, I started, but the words caught in my throat. She smiled softly, understanding in her eyes. "It's okay. You don't have to say anything. Just tell me if you want me to stop." And then she was kissing me, her lips soft and insistent against mine. For a heartbeat, I was paralyzed with shock. Then, like a dam breaking, all the pent-up longing and desire of the past weeks came rushing out. I kissed her back with everything I had, my hands tangling in her hair, drawing her closer. Allison responded in kind, her touch setting my skin on fire. The kiss deepened, becoming hungry, desperate. Years of loneliness, of holding myself apart, melted away in the heat of Allison's embrace. When we finally broke apart, both gasping for air, I felt dizzy with more than just the fall. Allison's eyes were wide, her lips slightly swollen. She looked as stunned as I felt. "Wow," she breathed. I laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. "Yeah, wow." We disentangled ourselves slowly, neither quite willing to break contact completely. As we sat up, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. "So," Allison said, a hint of uncertainty creeping into her voice. "Where do we go from here?" It was a loaded question, one that brought all my fears and doubts rushing back. But as I looked at Allison, strong, beautiful Allison who had quite literally caught me when I was falling, I knew I couldn't run away from this. Not again. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I want to find out. If you're willing to be patient with me." Allison's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "For you? Always." As we packed up our gear and headed back down the mountain, a new energy hummed between us. The future was uncertain, full of potential pitfalls and challenges. But for the first time in years, I was excited to see where the path might lead. Little did I know, our newfound happiness was about to be put to the test in ways neither of us could have imagined. The weeks following that fateful climb were a blur of stolen kisses and lingering touches. Allison and I fell into a comfortable rhythm, exploring our newfound connection with the same careful precision we'd use on a challenging route. Each day brought new discoveries, the way Allison's eyes lit up when she talked about her favorite trails, the soft sounds she made when I kissed that spot just below her ear, the warmth of her hand in mine as we walked through Scottsdale's art district. It wasn't all smooth sailing, of course. We both had our baggage, my lingering guilt over Sarah, Allison's fear of commitment from a past relationship gone sour. But we were working through it, one step at a time. That particular evening, I was puttering around my apartment, half-heartedly tidying up while waiting for Allison to arrive for our movie night. The doorbell rang, and I felt a flutter of anticipation in my stomach. Gosh, would I ever get used to this feeling? I swung the door open, a grin already spreading across my face. "You're early! I was just about to." The words died in my throat. It wasn't Allison standing there. It was Sarah. "Hey, Lil," she said softly, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy. "Can I come in?" I stood frozen for a moment, my mind reeling. Sarah, here, now. After all this time. I nodded mutely, stepping aside to let her enter. Sarah walked in, her gaze darting around the apartment. She looked small somehow, diminished. A far cry from the vivacious girl I'd fallen for all those years ago. "Nice place," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I cleared my throat. "Thanks. Sarah, what are you?" "I left him," she blurted out, turning to face me. "I finally did it. I packed a bag and just left." I blinked, trying to process this information. That's good, Sarah. I'm proud of you. But why are you here?" She took a step closer, her eyes searching mine. "Because of you, Lil. That night I called the helpline. Hearing your voice, it was like a wake-up call. I realized I'd made a terrible mistake all those years ago. I never should have let you go." My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. "Sarah, But before I could finish, she closed the distance between us and kissed me. For a split second, I was transported back to that summer at Eagle Mountain, to stolen moments behind the mess hall and whispered promises under starry skies. Then reality came crashing back. I pulled away, gently but firmly pushing Sarah back. "No," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Sarah, no. This isn't. We can't." The hurt in her eyes was like a physical blow. "But I thought, the way you talked to me that night on the phone, I thought you still cared." "I do care," I said, running a hand through my hair in frustration. "But not like that, not anymore. Sarah, it's been 15 years. We're different people now." She shook her head, a desperate edge creeping into her voice. "No, we can make it work. I know we can. Just give me a chance, Lil. Please." The raw need in her voice tugged at something deep inside me. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to promise her everything would be okay. But I knew that would be a lie. "I'm seeing someone," I said quietly. "Someone who makes me happy. I'm sorry, Sarah, but whatever we had, it's in the past. You need to move forward, find your own happiness." Sarah's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. "But I don't know how," she whispered. "I don't know who I am without him." I was about to respond when a knock at the door made us both jump. Shit. Allison. I opened the door to find Allison standing there, a bottle of wine in one hand and a DVD in the other. Her smile faded as she took in the scene before her, me looking guilty and flustered, and Sarah tear-stained and vulnerable. "Am I interrupting something?" Allison asked, her voice carefully neutral. "No," I said quickly. "Allison, this is Sarah. She's an old friend. She just stopped by unexpectedly." Sarah's eyes darted between us, realization dawning on her face. "Oh," she said softly. "I see." An uncomfortable silence descended, thick with unspoken words and tangled emotions. I felt caught between my past and my present, unsure of how to bridge the gap. Allison, bless her, took charge of the situation. "Sarah," she said, her voice kind but firm. "It looks like you're going through a tough time. Why don't we all sit down and talk? Maybe we can help you figure out your next steps." I shot Allison a grateful look, marveling at her compassion. This was why I was falling for her ability to see beyond her own feelings, to extend kindness even in difficult situations. As we settled onto the couch, Sarah between Allison and me, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Guilt for the pain I was causing Sarah. Gratitude for Allison's understanding. And underneath it all, a sense of rightness. This wasn't how I'd planned to spend the evening, but somehow it felt important, like we were all exactly where we needed to be. Little did I know, this unexpected reunion was about to set in motion a chain of events that would test the strength of my relationship with Allison, force me to confront my own past, and ultimately, lead me to discover just how high I was willing to climb for love. The weeks following Sarah's unexpected visit were tense, to say the least. Allison had been understanding, almost too understanding, but I could sense her unease. We'd talk about it in fits and starts, never quite getting to the heart of the matter. It felt like we were scaling a sheer cliff face, searching for solid handholds in a sea of smooth rock. I threw myself into my work, taking on more challenging climbs and longer expeditions. It was easier to focus on the physical strain of a difficult ascent than to confront the emotional tangle waiting for me back in Scottsdale. It was during one of these escapes that I received the call. A freak storm had hit the Superstition Mountains, catching a group of hikers off guard. Search and rescue was mobilizing, and they needed experienced climbers to help navigate the treacherous terrain. I didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way," I told the coordinator, already throwing gear into my pack. The drive to the mountains was a blur of rain-slicked roads and howling wind. As I pulled into the makeshift base camp, I saw a familiar figure directing volunteers. Allison. Our eyes met across the chaos of the camp, and for a moment, everything else fell away. Then she was striding towards me, all business. "Glad you could make it," she said, her voice clipped. "We've got 3 hikers unaccounted for. Last known location was near Weaver's Needle." I nodded, pushing aside the tension between us. There were lives at stake. "What's the plan?" Allison outlined the search grid, her expertise evident in every detail. As she spoke, I was struck by her calm efficiency, the way she handled the pressure of the situation. This was Allison in her element, and it was breathtaking to witness. We set out in teams, battling driving rain and treacherous mud. The normally familiar landscape had become alien and hostile, rock faces slick with water, trails obscured by debris. Every step was a calculated risk. Hours passed in a grueling cycle of climbing, searching, and battling the elements. My muscles screamed in protest, but I pushed on. Somewhere out there, people needed our help. It was nearing dusk when I heard it, a faint cry carried on the wind. I froze, straining to pinpoint the sound. "Over there!" I shouted to Allison, who was a few yards ahead. I pointed to a narrow crevice partially hidden by a fallen tree. We approached cautiously, calling out reassurances. As we drew closer, I could make out 2 figures huddled in the shelter of the rock. The 3rd hiker was nowhere to be seen. "We're here to help," Allison said, her voice steady and calm. "Are you injured?" One of the hikers, a young woman with a gash on her forehead, nodded weakly. "My ankle. I think it's broken. And Tom. He went to find help. He hasn't come back." I exchanged a glance with Allison. The situation had just gotten a lot more complicated. "Okay," Allison said, taking charge. "Lillian, you stay with them. Start first aid and prepare them for evacuation. I'll go look for Tom." "Like hell you will," I snapped, surprising myself with the vehemence in my voice. "You're not going out there alone in this weather." Allison's eyes flashed. "We don't have time to argue. Someone needs to stay with the injured, and someone needs to find Tom before he freezes to death." "Then we go together," I insisted. "We'll stabilize them, call in their location, and then search as a team." For a moment, I thought she would argue. Then her shoulders sagged slightly. "Fine." But we moved fast. We worked quickly, splinting the woman's ankle and treating the man's hypothermia as best we could with our limited supplies. Once they were as comfortable as possible, we radioed in their location and set out to find the missing hiker. The storm was intensifying, the wind whipping rain and small debris into our faces. We pushed on, calling Tom's name until our voices were hoarse. It was Allison who spotted him first, a crumpled form at the base of a small cliff. My heart lurched as we scrambled down to him, praying we weren't too late. To our immense relief, Tom was alive, though barely conscious. He'd fallen, dislocating his shoulder and hitting his head in the process. Together, Allison and I managed to stabilize him and begin the arduous process of getting him to safety. The journey back was a blur of pain and exhaustion. Every step was a battle against the elements and our own fatigue. But we pressed on, driven by the knowledge that lives depended on us. When we finally stumbled into base camp, Tom secured on a stretcher between us, I felt a wave of emotion so strong it nearly brought me to my knees. We'd done it. Against all odds, we'd brought them all back alive. As the medical team took over, Allison and I stood there, rain-soaked and mud-splattered, staring at each other. Without a word, she pulled me into a fierce embrace. I clung to her, feeling the tremors running through her body, or was it my own? "I'm sorry," I murmured into her neck. "For everything. For pushing you away, for not being honest about my feelings." Allison pulled back slightly, her green eyes searching mine. "Lillian," she said softly, "when I saw you arrive at camp today, I realized something. No matter what's going on between us, no matter how complicated things get, there's no one else I'd rather have by my side in a crisis. Or in life." My breath caught in my throat. "Allison, But before I could finish, a commotion near the medical tent caught our attention. One of the rescued hikers was having trouble breathing. Without hesitation, Allison sprinted towards the chaos, her instincts kicking in once again. I watched her go, my heart swelling with a mixture of pride and something deeper, something I was finally ready to name. As I moved to join her, to offer whatever help I could, I knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, Allison and I would face them together. The storm might have passed, but our greatest adventure was just beginning. The aftermath of the rescue mission brought Allison and me closer than ever. We spent nights talking until dawn, unpacking our fears, our hopes, our pasts. It wasn't always easy, we both had our share of scars, but with each conversation, each shared vulnerability, I felt the walls around my heart crumbling. One lazy Sunday morning, as sunlight streamed through Allison's bedroom window, I found myself tracing the lines of her face with my fingertips. She stirred, her green eyes fluttering open. "Morning, beautiful," I murmured, marveling at how natural it felt to wake up beside her. Allison's lips curved into a sleepy smile. Morning, what time is it?" I glanced at the clock. "Just past 9. We should probably get up if we want to make that hike." But neither of us moved. Instead, Allison pulled me closer, her hand warm against the small of my back. "5 more minutes," she mumbled into my neck. I laughed softly, running my fingers through her tousled hair. "You said that half an hour ago." "Sue me," Allison retorted, her voice muffled. "I'm comfortable." As we lay there, tangled in sheets and each other, I felt a surge of emotion so strong it almost overwhelmed me. This was it, I realized. This was what I'd been searching for all these years, scaling mountains and running from my past. This sense of peace, of belonging. "I love you," I blurted out, the words escaping before I could second-guess myself. Allison went still in my arms. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. Then she pulled back, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Say it again," she whispered. I cupped her face in my hands, my thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "I love you, Allison Reed, more than I've ever loved anyone." Her answering smile was radiant. "I love you too, Lillian Thompson. God, I love you so much." What followed was a blur of kisses and caresses, laughter and quiet sighs. We made love with a tenderness that brought tears to my eyes, every touch a promise, every kiss a declaration. Needless to say, we never made it to that hike. Later, as we finally emerged from the bedroom in search of coffee and sustenance, Allison's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced at it, her brow furrowing. "Everything okay?" I asked, wrapping my arms around her waist from behind. She leaned back into me with a sigh. "It's work. There's a last-minute opening for a guide on an expedition to Denali. They want to know if I can fill in." My heart sank. Denali was no joke. It would mean weeks apart, with limited communication. "When?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "They leave in 3 days," Allison said quietly. I tightened my arms around her, resting my chin on her shoulder. "You should go," I said, even as every fiber of my being rebelled against the idea of being separated so soon after our declarations. Allison turned in my arms, her expression conflicted. "Are you sure? I know I don't want to leave you." I forced a smile. "Hey, I'm a climber too, remember? I get it. This is a great opportunity. And it's not like I won't be here when you get back." She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, but promise me something?" "Anything. When I get back, let's plan our own expedition. Just you and me, somewhere neither of us has been before." The idea sent a thrill through me. "It's a date," I grinned, sealing the promise with a kiss. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of preparation and stolen moments. We made love with a desperate intensity, as if trying to store up enough memories to last through the long separation ahead. On the morning of Allison's departure, I drove her to the airport. As we stood at the security checkpoint, I found myself fighting back tears. "Hey," Allison said softly, tilting my chin up. "None of that. This isn't goodbye, it's just, see you later." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I know. I'm just going to miss you so damn much." "I'll miss you too," she murmured, pulling me close. "But think of the reunion we'll have." I laughed wetly. "You better come back in one piece, Reed. I've got plans for you." "Oh yeah?" She raised an eyebrow, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Care to share?" Instead of answering, I kissed her, pouring all my love and longing into it. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, I whispered, "Come back to me, and you'll find out." With one last lingering look, Allison shouldered her pack and headed through security. I watched until she disappeared from view, my heart aching in a way I'd never experienced before. As I drove home, the apartment feeling emptier than it ever had, I tried to focus on the future, on the adventures we'd have, the life we'd build together. But a nagging worry persisted, a voice in the back of my mind whispering that nothing this good could last. Little did I know, that voice was about to grow a lot louder. The next few weeks would test our love in ways I never could have imagined, forcing us to confront our deepest fears and fight for what we'd found in each other. But in that moment, driving through the streets of Scottsdale with the memory of Allison's kiss still on my lips, all I knew was that I'd climb any mountain, weather any storm, to keep what we had. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready to face them. For Allison. For us. For love. 6 months had passed since that tearful goodbye at the airport, and life had taken more twists and turns than the most challenging climbing route I'd ever tackled. Allison's Denali expedition had stretched from weeks into months due to unexpected weather conditions and logistical issues. Our communication had been sporadic at best, leaving me wrestling with doubts and insecurities I thought I'd long since conquered. But now, standing at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This was it, the expedition we'd planned during those precious few days before Allison left, our chance to reconnect, to reaffirm what we'd found in each other. "Ready for this, Thompson?" Allison's voice cut through my reverie, a hint of challenge in her tone. I turned to face her, drinking in the sight of her sun-kissed skin and wind-tousled hair. "Born ready, Reed," I shot back with a grin. As we began our ascent, falling into the familiar rhythm of climb and rest, I marveled at how easily we synced up despite the months apart. It was like no time had passed at all, and yet, everything had changed. We talked as we climbed, filling in the gaps left by spotty satellite phone calls and brief emails. Allison told me about the challenges she'd faced on Denali, the moments of doubt and triumph. I shared stories of the youth climbing program I'd started at the LGBTQ Center, inspired by our shared passion for the mountains. With each step, each shared laugh and meaningful glance, I felt the distance between us melting away. By the time we made camp on the third night, huddled together in our tent as the wind howled outside, I knew with absolute certainty that what we had was unbreakable. "Lil," Allison murmured, her breath warm against my cheek. "There's something I need to tell you." I tensed, old fears rising unbidden. "What is it?" She pulled back slightly, her green eyes serious in the dim light of our headlamps. "When I was on Denali, I had a lot of time to think, about us, about the future. And I realized something." My heart pounded as I waited for her to continue. "I realized that I never want to be apart from you like that again," Allison said softly. "I want to wake up next to you every morning, plan our climbs together, build a life with you. Lillian Thompson, will you marry me?" For a moment I couldn't breathe. Then, laugh bubbled up from deep inside me, a laugh of pure, unadulterated joy. "Is that a yes?" Allison asked, a hint of uncertainty creeping into her voice. I cupped her face in my hands, my eyes shining with unshed tears. "Yes," I whispered, 1,000 times yes. We sealed the promise with a kiss that left us both breathless, clinging to each other as if we could meld our very souls together. The rest of the climb was a blur of exhilaration, both from the physical challenge and the giddy happiness of our engagement. When we finally reached the summit, standing arm in arm as the sun rose over the African plains, I felt like I was on top of the world in every sense. "I have something for you," I said, reaching into my pack. I pulled out a small velvet box, one I'd been carrying since we left Scottsdale. Allison's eyes widened as I opened it, revealing two simple titanium bands. Great minds think alike, she laughed, her voice thick with emotion. We exchanged rings there on the summit, our promises echoing across the vast expanse around us. It wasn't a traditional wedding by any means, but it was perfect for us. As we began our descent, hand in hand, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought us here. From that first challenging climb in the superstitions to the storm-tossed rescue mission, from tearful goodbyes to joyful reunions, every step had led us to this moment. "What are you thinking about?" Allison asked, squeezing my hand. I smiled, my heart full to bursting. "I'm thinking about how lucky I am, and about all the adventures we have ahead of us." "Oh, yeah?" She raised an eyebrow, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Care to share some of these adventures?" I laughed, pulling her close for a quick kiss. "Well, for starters, I was thinking we could expand that youth program. Maybe start a climbing school for LGBTQ kids who need a safe space to challenge themselves and build confidence." Allison's face lit up. "I love it. We could do outreach programs, wilderness therapy." As we continued our descent, bouncing ideas back and forth, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. This was what I'd been searching for all along. Not just a partner to climb with, but someone to build a life with, to make a difference with. 6 months later, we stood before a small gathering of friends and family in a picturesque clearing in the Superstition Mountains, the very spot where we'd shared our first kiss. As we exchanged vows, I looked into Allison's eyes and saw our whole future reflected there. A future full of love, adventure, and purpose. As we sealed our union with a kiss, cheers erupting around us, I knew that this was just the beginning. We had mountains yet to climb, challenges to face, and a world to change together. And I couldn't wait to get started.